Good morning, everybody. I don't know what the
Good.
topic is.
I'm going with the flow.
Right? I wanted to make sure that we started as close to possible as on time, but my computer decided to reboot. Also, it's been removing the internet. Like my computer forgets the internet exists completely. I'll
Wow.
be on it, and then it will just go to like the global where it's like there's no network, and I'm like, but you were on the
You were just there.
you were there. I just thanks.
Can
So
you
it did that.
imagine? Can you imagine? We are so dependent on it now that if it were to just suddenly stop working everywhere, I think we'd have a global meltdown.
Yeah,
I
it'd
mean,
be
I think I
brutal.
would enjoy it probably for a few days and then I'd be like, okay, I got work to do and all my stuff is in the cloud. I mean, I keep copies on my computer, but everything's so cloud-based now. It's like that would be hard.
Yeah, if there was no it's brutal. Sometimes I look at the computer like, "You were created for this. How did you forget it existed? It's a laptop. You were created to travel because of the internet."
Well,
Wi-Fi.
you know, I'm old enough that, the idea of the laptop was wonderful because we could just have everything and we could go from place to place, but it's all on the laptop.
Yeah.
And I'm still old-fashioned enough that when I bought this new laptop last year, I wanted a terabyte of storage on my hard drive. I have a lot of photos. I have a lot of media. I don't want to have to depend on being able to connect to the cloud to have access to some of that. So I it's a nice tiny computer, but it's got a massive hard drive, and that's to me that's important now. And I know a lot of them folks don't even use that. Everything is they use the tablet and there's no storage. And I'm like, how do you do that? What's I love my iPad, but it doesn't really work for work.
Yep, exactly. No, I
You
agree.
know?
And there's a lot of people who do make it work, especially iPads. Apple have great products where you can do all kinds of
Yeah.
things with them. But once again, we're looking at it's not a physical copy. It's not a copy on if your internet on your tablet is shot, you're done. You don't have a whole lot of in-house storage on those. So those are all
Yep.
things to think about when you're looking at what are you doing, how are you working, and what is working, right? And I did not. I've got
What
my
works
name
and
in
what
my
works
face.
for you?
Yeah.
And what works for you, right?
Yeah,
What
everybody
works
works
for
very
what
different.
works for me doesn't work for everybody else. Again, I'm a little bit older, so um, I do things a little bit different, but I'm also very adaptable. But you know, I work for myself, so I don't have anybody else that I have to respond to about how I do things. I get to
Yep.
choose. And when you work for someone else or you work in that collective environment, they they have their rules for security and those kind of things, and you do have to kind of take that into account. I remember, my son told me he used to work for PayPal and he was mentoring and training a new employee, and the guy was at the coffee shop getting in to be trained, and Randy's like, no. He says, you cannot do this work from the coffee shop. He said, shut down immediately, get back to your house, and then get on. He says, we need to talk. Because yes, they have internet, but it's not secure. So
Yeah.
don't go sit at the coffee shop and do your banking. You know, don't do that. Don't do that. That's not safe for your bank account. Don't um don't even sit on the plane and do your banking if you get on the internet. That's not secure. And then people wonder how their information gets out and about. Well, where were you when you were doing that?
Yep, exactly. The other day, I got a new phone, and the other day I touched it to my credit card, and my bank account came up, and I was like,
Oh no.
it didn't pull up the actual account, it pulled up the app though, and I was like, wait,
Oh,
that
oh
was
no, no.
I didn't know that they talk like that.
I've never tried that, but I try to have all of my stuff with Face ID
hmm
so nobody can watch me typing in my password or grab my password.
I have a very huge fear of Face ID and Finger ID, and I don't know if it comes from watching all the gangster movies where they cut off people's thumbs. I will not use touch on my phone at all. I don't care if you're going to like if you want my password and you're going to try to like torture me, great. But if you're like, "Oh, I'll just take your finger." I have a bigger problem with that, or all the movies of people peeling faces off. I will not do the face recognition or the fingerprint on my phone at all. There's so much
Well, the
trauma.
thing with Face ID is, yeah, the thing with the Face ID is your eyes have to be open.
Mhm.
So and depending on the app, some of them I had my reading glasses on when I set it up, and some I didn't. So I have to have my reading glasses nearby just in case, because I never remember which one does which. And because I have the Raynaud's,
Mhm.
I was so glad when they went away from the fingerprint thing because that never works for me. And when I would, even at the airport, there were the things where you had to put your finger. It doesn't work for me. My fingers, when they're in that state, they get all puckered, and you can't get my fingerprints. So I use clear at the airport because that goes off your eyes, and then I don't have to worry about if my hands are puckered and frozen, or you know. And where this all goes with going with the flow is learning to be adaptable over the things we can't control how they're done.
Yep.
And there are
Exactly.
just going to be some things that do not fit into to our routine, that don't fit into how we want to do things. When you're at work, if you work with someone else or for someone else, you don't always get to decide how to get things done. So, how can you adapt without losing the integrity of what you're doing?
I think
I
one of
think
the
that's
big
super important.
things and I think one of the big things with that is it's whether work will listen or not. Because there's always that conversation of, "Hi, I understand that this is how you need this done. However, I personally could do it this way and get the same results. Is there a way we can meet in the middle?" I think that that's a conversation that back in the day you could not have. Back in the day, it was it's this way or it's not a way at all. And I think now we're coming to recognize that everybody works different, right? And so yes, there's times where there's something where the square has to go into the square and there's not a way to manipulate that situation, but there's always room for grace and to ask for it. Hey,
And
this is something I struggle with.
and also making sure that you understand how to ask for it depending on who you're talking to. That's one of the tools that I offer, and one that I use a lot is I know what my personality style is. I've learned to recognize other people's personality styles in a very short period of time. And being willing to maybe reframe my question or request in a way that makes the most sense for them, so it doesn't seem combative. It doesn't seem like I'm saying your way is wrong. It's just I find I work better this way. What's the objective? Is it to have it done this way to get this result, or do you just want the result? And I think companies are more open to that, although I'm seeing that some of them are trying to go back to how things were before the pandemic, and they're losing um, they're losing a lot of their good people. Uh, some of that is that generational spread again that you see in offices where you've got a good 4 to 5 generations in there, and them not being able to communicate effectively with each other can be really, really challenging. So,
It's one of those really hard things when you're looking at it, especially with the generations. And
yeah,
if you're somebody who scrolls reels and TikToks, I do that a lot. And I go from the Gen Z to the boomer to like all the different people making fun of all the different generations. But what is interesting is they're making fun of them, but they're understanding where they're coming from too. They're saying, "Hey, I get it. This is what you had. This is what we had. Hey, I get it. This is where you're at. This is where we've been," right? And so if we could all kind of come together in that space of, "Great. Yeah, we did it the hard way. Let's do it the easy way." Like,
well,
let's figure it out.
yeah, learn from our mistakes, and I think here in the U.S. we really don't value the experience of our elders. We tend to think everything is old fashioned if it's done by people older than us in a way that's different than us. That's how, that's how I grew up. That's how my parents grew up. And that's even, in my son's generation. And it's not that things are right or wrong. Things were done at a certain way, in a certain way at a certain time because that's how it worked. When you look at the advantages and the technological changes, even just in the last 5 years, let alone 20 years, things have changed so much. And I think people in my age group, I'm on the very late edge of the boomers and then into the next generation. We're a little bit more adaptable, but Gen Z and the younger generation, they've grown up with electronics. That's just they've been playing with electronics since they were old enough to be able to hold the phone and watch and play with their fingers. And if you watch these kids, man, they're in first and second grade and they know electronics. And that's great. That'll be very helpful for them as they grow older and go into the work environment. But I do see that we are losing those kids in that age group are losing the ability to just be children and go outside and play. And
Yeah.
I'm always amazed at the number of people I see in the restaurant, their kids, screaming and yelling because they can't have their phone. And it's like, do you guys even talk at home? I think that's a lost art.
Well, and that's the thing too, as
Yeah.
parents, when do we go outside with our kids to play, right? Our parents
Right.
would they when we were little, our parents would go outside and play with us, and then after a certain time, it was like just out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I
It
think
gets
it's
dark.
really
Be home.
right. And to your point, it does make sense, right? Yes, everybody wants to be technologically advanced, but let's slow it down sometimes for certain people that we work with. Maybe you do have to print that paper out. Maybe you do have to make specific things in a less technical way. Maybe you need to kind of
Yeah.
slow it down. Everybody wants to use all the high tech tools and all the things that get things done, but some people are still great with spreadsheets. Just what can we do to meet in the middle? And that's a huge thing. But always be able to ask and offer. And when you're presenting that, say, here is what we do now, here's how I can do it faster, and here's a happy middle that kind of could integrate both things that doesn't switch or do those things. And so when you have those conversations, you know, I love that the topic is go with the flow because yes, you have to go with the flow. But I also am one of the people who I don't go with the flow
Yeah.
very well. It's a very difficult thing for me. I
Well,
try
and
to
sometimes
find
that's not the way to go.
yeah. And sometimes it is, and
Yeah.
sometimes I'm just difficult. So also understand, are you being difficult in this situation or is there a different way? So it's really about reading where the situation is. And sometimes, yes, there's a better way, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen. And that's something that needs to be taken into consideration too, is it could be done differently, it could be done better, but it's not killing anybody to keep it the way it is.
Right. It may be less efficient, but again, depending on who you're talking to, how do you present that so that they're willing to let you try something different? Because in the end, especially if you're talking to your boss or your supervisor, they're the ones that are being held responsible for the quality of the work of their people. And so sometimes that's where that hesitancy is. Yes, we'd like, we don't have a problem with a different way, but you still have to get it done correctly and on time, or it's my head on the chopping block. And that's where sometimes you'll see that resistance. So maybe finding something that's not mission critical that you can show them that you think you've got a streamlined way so that when it comes to something super important, they might be more willing to give you that leeway because you've shown them with other projects that you got done what they wanted done faster in a more efficient way without their head be feeling like they're on the block if it doesn't work.
Yep. I love it.
Because
Thank you, Linda, so much.
thank you.
I love this conversation that we always have. It's always fun to just get together, work together, and talk about what does it look like to be at your peak performance. If that means that you have to reach peak performance at somebody else's skill with their boxes, if that means you can have conversations that allow you to be where you need to be, accepting what it is as it is, and really but having the conversation, you don't have to accept it until after the conversation, right? At least be willing to have that talk, have that conversation, and then look at it as okay, we're going to do this. My laptop decided that it was going to update 2 minutes before we went live. Those are things you can't
And there's not a
negotiate.
whole lot you can do about that once it starts.
Not when it erases the internet. Maybe the restart is what you need.
True, true.
So we appreciate everybody over here, that side, QR codes. Go ahead, book with Linda, learn about peak performance. Linda, you have a class coming up on when is your class?
I've got a self-care workshop tonight. So,
Tonight. It is tonight.
um,
Self-care workshop tonight.
it is tonight. It is tonight at 7 o'clock. Yep, self-care workshop, and I don't have the link, but
We'll
it's
get the link into the chat.
yeah,
But we'll
let me
get
get
that
that in
taken
there.
care of, everybody. And I'm going to go ahead and close out. Linda's going to post the link, and we will see you all next week, same time. Have a great day.